there's no right or wrong answer, but there's always a better answer. And so for you, what is your better answer?
You have to run it through a lot of different filters and see what lands, but make sure you're not doing it from ego or from not enoughness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. Today, for episode number 542, it's amazing that we're at 542, we are going to talk about whose opinions actually matter in your life. So, Alan and I got a not so positive review on Apple Podcasts. If you guys do love us, we would appreciate a positive review. We read every single one of them, and they genuinely mean the world to us. But we got a not so positive review.
Three stars.
We were going to read it, but we don't have our phone, so we can't.
Yeah.
But basically, this person said that, and it's interesting. I'll tell you about it first, and then we'll take you through the thought process of what we actually thought about. The person basically said that I burst their eardrums when I do the intro, that Alan mentions Emilia too much, and then we think that we're Gary V.
I completely forgot that he said that about Emilia.
I don't know if it was a he or a she. I think it was a she.
Okay.
But again,
sorry. Yeah.
No worries. So we get this review. I saw it. I read it on the team call, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for feedback. What do we think is true? What do we think is false?" And this person gave us a 3-star review, so it wasn't like a 0. It wasn't like I hate these people.
Right.
The review basically said, "I want to like them, but it's hard." I was like, okay, that's interesting. We haven't got one like that before. So the thought process for me immediately is like, okay, what is true? What is false?
I want to like them, but it's hard. Try harder. I'm just kidding.
For me, anytime it has to do with not the podcast, but maybe the setup of the podcast. We've had other people say oh, we're fake and blah, blah, blah. I know my truth. That doesn't really bother me. I know my truth when it comes to that. I'm not fake. I'm one of the most genuine people you'll ever meet. If you haven't had the opportunity, I almost said the pleasure of meeting me. God. If you haven't had the opportunity to meet me, you might not know that. Okay, I understand you might see us and think that. That's totally fine. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. But when they said something about the intro, in my mind, it's oh, interesting. Does everybody think that? Am I really too loud? Because I am loud. But I also pride myself on being loud. So it hurt me that something I really enjoy about the intro might be turning off other people. Okay, that's where my mind goes. Then I get feedback from the team, and the team's oh, we actually really enjoy it. But then Alan said some people have reached out to him and said it's a little bit loud, and they have to turn it up or down. So for me, it was this whose opinion actually matters? Whose opinion should I actually take here? I don't want to ego up and say, look, screw you. Are you even a podcaster? I don't want to do that, because sometimes the customer is right. Right? I have to take that into effect. So this was our thought process. Alan and I talked about it a lot today. Now, again, for you, maybe it's not a podcast. Maybe it's not a piece of art. Maybe it's not whatever. It's something. Whose opinions actually matter, and how do you know? That's where we're going with this episode.
Super difficult.
It's going to be a quick one, too, because we got 5 minutes left.
Right. The thing that's interesting about this is you can think back to when you were a kid or when you were younger, middle school, high school. You can think of advice that was really good that you should have taken and didn't.
Yeah.
I know I can. And then you can think of advice that was terrible that you did take.
You shouldn't have.
And you shouldn't have, right? I was told I couldn't get into MIT, that kind of thing. So
same.
It's interesting. It's interesing that we had the same guidance counselor. Interesting.
We did, yeah. They didn't say anything about that. I think they probably told me college probably isn't for you.
Which also is, a whole thing. But the important piece here, I think, is I think your opinion matters most. I think that, what I told Johanna's Notre Dame Academy athletes was that I'm here today to speak to you, but I can only raise your awareness with my own experience, my own knowledge, but nobody can tell you what's best for you. You have to decide for yourself. Now, what you can do is take other perspectives, like you're talking about, and then try to figure out and learn from it. But I just don't think it's smart to take anyone's word as gospel, even mine.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you have to ask yourself it depends, right? If it's a product or a service or your show, some people are going to reach out and they're going to have actual feedback. I think it's the way that they go about the feedback and the opinion. If it's something in terms of what you're doing with your life, I think you have to listen to people that are ahead of you. David Meltzer knows better than, okay, let's put it this way. David Meltzer knows better than my family. when it comes to finances, speaking, podcasting, business, interviews. He just does.
For sure.
So it would be almost, I would say, irresponsible of me to take their advice over David Meltzer's when it comes to things that he's more successful at. That's okay.
But here's the problem. What if you have more positive associations, emotions to your family than you do Dave?
Yeah.
This is what the trap people get into. I'm glad we're talking about this. If you love someone in your life that gives bad advice, you're emotionally connected to them. You're more likely to take their advice.
But you can love somebody without loving their advice.
You can. It's very difficult, though, because they have influence over them.
I'm good at that.
You are.
I think I'm used to it. I won't say I'm good at it. It's something that I've practiced longer.
You are good at that.
I appreciate that.
And that's called the liking and disliking bias. If you like someone, you're more likely to take their advice. If you dislike them, you're less likely to. And the thing that's important here is no one's right or wrong. There's just better. There's no right or wrong answer, but there's always a better answer. And so for you, what is your better answer? So you took the review. You thought about it. You asked the team. I talked. Alessandro talked. We all told you our opinion. I told you some feedback that had gone under the radar from some other people.
Would have been nice to have.
Yeah, right. Seriously. But you got all the feedback at once. Now, what's your truth now?
I in my mind, and we went through this today, it's like I'm not hurt when it comes to my intrinsic value. It's not like this person hurt me by leaving this review. I just want to make sure that that other people aren't feeling the same way. Because I don't want to affect the podcast in a negative way by something that I can easily change. Now, and this is a good example. If somebody reached out and said, Kevin, you're a terrible speaker, you'll never be a successful podcaster, that's something that I would just say, like,
yeah, right.
I don't know what information you have to back this up. But somebody has a specific that has proof from other people, it's probably worth listening to. Do you have to change everything? No. But I think it's worth listening to. I think what happens, there's two things that can happen. One, this is what happens with me. One, I immediately say, I'm going to find this person and physically have a fist fight with them. Or you go to the not enoughness of like, oh man, I'm never going to be successful. Like this person doesn't like me. Whatever yours is, you got to figure out that first. I think the goal is let yourself bounce from one to the other and see where you land. And then get the opinions of people. This is the thing. You get an opinion from somebody that you might not know. You take it to people who you value their opinion. And you see what sticks. Honestly, and this is probably what's going to end up happening, I'm going to do the normal intro like I do every single episode. And in post-production, we're going to turn it down a little bit so it doesn't hurt people's ears.
Fire.
Why? Because I think that's one of the best things for me is my energy. I love, and I've gotten so much positive feedback. But I also don't want to be hurting people's ears just for the sake of saying, well, I have a lot of energy, deal with it. Right? So it allows me, it's a win-win. It allows me to be myself authentically and do what I love doing. And if it doesn't bother you, the sound thing, you won't even notice the change. If it does bother you, you'll notice it. So I think across the board, it's more of a win-win. So that's how we got to that.
I think it's important to find whatever your truth is. Just be careful because when emotions are high, it's going to be noisy. It's going to be difficult, right? What would I say? I would say this. Again, this episode is about taking whose advice should you value? Whose advice should you take? I've gotten advice in my life from people who have very, very strong opinions about what we do in business. And it's like, you're not a business owner. You've never been to business school. You've never run a successful business. Like, you've never done this before. That person's opinion might have some feedback in it that is valuable, but it's not going to be nearly the same as Evan Carmichael talking to us about business when he's done this successfully. And even him, we have to remember he's not a podcaster, he's a YouTuber. All advice comes with it a bias. You have to understand the bias and the advice and then act accordingly.
And I think the other thing too is sometimes you can, if it was somebody who I knew disliked me that came in and said like, hey, you suck at podcasting, that's easier to wipe off. You just don't like me.
Right.
When it's somebody random who you don't know if they're your ideal listener or your ideal client if you have a business. So you have to run it through a lot of different filters and see what lands, but make sure you're not doing it from ego or from not enoughness. That's what I would say. If it's from ego or scarcity, you should probably try to hone it a little bit more and then really lean on your reference circle. That's the first thing I did was when we talked about it today, we talked to the team, like, what do you think? Okay, we go back and forth. This is where we land.
About it.
Yeah, I talked to Taryn about it. This is where we land. And then now we try that.
Now we get better.
It's not going to kill me to have it done in post-production. We have an amazing team who helps us with that. It's not going to affect you if you never noticed it before. Now you'll notice it because I'm talking about it.
Right.
So I think it's a win-win overall.
Me too.
I think it's most
What's the
important.
last piece of advice for someone about...
What I would say is very similar to the analogy I use when it comes to relationships. When you get an opinion or feedback from somebody outside of yourself, let the pinball analogy, let it bounce around a little bit. Like, let it shake off some of the crap. If you don't think you're good enough, you're probably going to go there, or you're going to ego up to say, like, oh, what do you know? Like, you're not a podcaster. I don't want to do that. Right. I don't want to do that because this person might have a great point. But if I let my ego cover up that point, I'll never get to the actual nougat center of it.
Fire.
Yeah, you dig it?
I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are a podcaster or want to become one in 2021, reach out to Alan or myself. We have Next Level Podcast Solutions. We help people all the way from audio editing and teaser clips all the way to full production of their show. They don't have to do anything. We're going on 16 full-time clients right now. It's the most amazing thing in the world. So if you want help with your podcast, we would love to be that for you. Also, if you are looking for two energetic, authentic, aligned, next-level speakers, Alan and I are really, really leaning into our speaking. That's something we were really doing before the pandemic, and now we're realizing there's a large opportunity to help people virtually. If you are a school, a business, whatever you are, if you want to bring two speakers in, Alan and I would love to do it, and we will do it for free just so we can help you guys and add value. Just reach out to us, and we'd love to meet you.
If you're listening to this on the day that it drops, it is Monday. So tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are doing a mastermind, Next Level Mastermind, on what we learned about relationships from our future wives. So Kevin and I have learned so much from Taryn and from Emilia, and we are going to share that with all of you so that you can succeed in your relationships as well. Also, I think what's most important here, and you've heard me say it before, we want other people connecting offline. This is a community. This isn't about Kevin and I. This is about a community of like-minded people all trying to get to the next level. Maybe Kevin and I are on chapter 8 when you're on chapter 3. Maybe you're on chapter 12 and we're on chapter 2. I don't know. But I do know that everyone has a different next level to get to. And it's not just about having people way ahead of you and way behind you. It's also about finding your peers within the community that you can learn from. You know, plus minus equal to. This community has a lot of plus minus equal to in all arenas. If it's podcasting, we're probably a plus. If it's fitness, we're probably a plus. If it's opening a dog shelter, we might not be. We might be able to learn from you. So get a part of this community. Next Level Masterminds every Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Boom. Boom. And if you're listening today, tomorrow we actually have last week's mastermind dropping with the one and only Brant Pinvidic. As always, we don't have fans. We have family, and we will see you at the next level.
Talk to you soon.
Switch it up that time.